We do a lot of head swaps on the channel, but this is probably my favourite one so far. Just saying. I started playing Warhammer back in 2003, so technically 3rd edition. It means Warhammer holds some nostalgic value for me, and when you start talking to somebody roughly my age about nostalgic value, it doesn't take long for Dragonball Z to come up. Goku taking 5 episodes to turn Super Saiyan for the very first time was basically become a personality trait of my generation. So what happens when we start mixing those two intellectual properties, Warhammer, Dragon Ball Z? We get this video. The first part should be pretty obvious. We're going to need a base, so I'm going to reach into the Aeldari Guardians kit. Now this is a kit that I use a lot, and if you've seen this head before, specifically, it means you've probably seen 40k and 40 seconds with stuff like this. After a clip and a clean, we're going to start sticking them together. Now, there's going to be a couple of little gaps here and there, like most models, and we're going to pull out some sprue glue. If you don't know what sprue glue is, it's literally sprue and glue, which is probably why we call it sprue glue. After putting on a dot of sprue glue, I'm going over with just some plain old Tamiya extra thin, just to smooth everything out. It's going to make it look like it was supposed to be one piece this whole time. When using sprue glue to join two pieces like I am here, don't use too much, because when you push the pieces together, it will probably squeeze out. I'm also going to use it to fill in some of the neck socket here, because the head that we have doesn't really have a ball joint on it. I also decided that the arm I put on I didn't really like, so we're going to swap it out for the grenade throwing arm. Looks better. Huge thank you to Jono from Ordnance Wargaming for scaling down and printing out these Vegeta heads for us. There's a link in the description if you want to check out his channel. A little bit of super glue to attach the resin head to the plastic body, and we're just about ready for priming. But just before we do, here's a little trick. Now, I don't like painting on bases, so I get a little bit of old sprue and some super glue and attach the miniature on that. Now, the super glue actually helps because you can break it apart a lot easier. Now we get to move on to paint. Now, I'm just priming this and zenithaling with the airbrush, and then everything is traditional brushwork after this, so don't worry, you'll be able to do it without an airbrush. We're going to kick off the painting with Vallejo model color blue. Now, we're only going to paint the parts that we want blue. We want to stay away from all the other armor panels that are going to be different colors. Because after the blue workup, we're going to be using speed paints. Now, this isn't going to be a slap chop version of speed paints. It's just to show you something else that you can do with them to kind of help along the painting process. And if you do make any mistakes along here, like I just did, you can go back and tidy up pretty easily. Once we're finished base coating the blue, we're going to take a medium blue by Vallejo and start using this basically as our mid-tone. Now, we want it a little bit darker than what this is, so we can come back with some glazes. I'm just going over very, very thinly and picking out the raised details. I'm also going to take a very simple approach to volumetrics to some of the legs and the arms. So what I'm doing here is basically I'm going to make a little gradient. So the higher it is, the lighter it's going to be, and it's going to move down into a darker color. But I'm going to be doing this on each individual part, essentially. Like you can see what I've done with the top thigh, and then we start again at the kneecap. This is just going to create some more visual interest with actually less work. And one of the easier places to do this is actually going to be the butt cheeks. And once we're done here, he's going to be able to crack a walnut with them clappers. To finish off the triad of blue and start our highlights, we're going to use Andrea blue, and this is literally just picking out the highest raised areas. Now, what I'm doing here is adding a little bit of paint and then feathering it out back into itself. So we're going to create a gradient from that darker blue across that medium blue and into our highest highlight. If you're confident enough, you can also try glazing here. Now, glazing lighter colors is a little bit more difficult, and if you want to start practicing glazing, I'd probably suggest going the other way and glaze a darker color over a lighter color instead of the vice versa. Now we're finished with the blue, we're going to take an off-white and we're going to do a couple of things with this. One, we're highlighting, so we're going to highlight everything that's left essentially. And two, this is actually also going to clean up some of the overspill with our blue, which is going to be really handy. Now, while it looks like a bit of a stark jump, and it is to be completely fair, what we're going to do is we're going to start glazing over with speed paint. And what the speed paint is going to do is start bringing everything together while giving us some color. So we're already actually painting in our volumes. You could look at this as kind of undersketching if you wanted to. Now, because we are taking a value sketch approach, I want you to start thinking about the light, the shapes, and where you want to draw attention to. So something like the front of the armor panel here, you want to kind of focus it more towards the center, so it gives shadows at the side and really gives it that 3D feel. Where something like the boot, we just want the detail, so we're really only drawing an outline for it. The same goes for the hands. We all know what hands look like, so we just want to pick out the details that give us some separation and really help it to stick out. Now we're finished with our value sketching, we're going to bring out the speed paints. Battleship Grey is our first color, and we're going to give a fairly healthy dose to everything that we want white. That's the boots, the gloves, the back, and all the chest armor. This is going to be a really nice off cold white. After that, we're going to pull out Ancient Honey. Now, this is one of my favorite speed paint colors, but I want you to start very thin, work in very thin layers and build it up slowly. Wait until everything's dry, then give it another coat, and then you can build up the richness or the intensity that you want slowly, and that's what's going to give you the best result here. You'll see when we do the glamour shots at the end of the video, I actually went through and did 4, maybe 5 passes of a very thin down Ancient Honey, and that's what really gave us the richness of the color. Around here is probably 2-3 coats in, and the first coat for the abdomen, so take it slow. Skin tones, everybody's favorite. Now this one was a little bit more difficult because while proportionately the size of the head works with the body, some of the features were really quite fine, which does make it a little bit more difficult to work with. Now, for the actual colors, we started off with 2 thin coats dwarven skin, and I did exactly that. I gave it 2 thin coats to get a nice even coverage. It's really important to let those coats dry in between layers because you could run the risk of tearing the paint, and especially on the face where a lot of the focus is going to be, that becomes really difficult. Now all I'm doing here is I've taken our same dwarven skin and mixed in a little bit of light flesh from Vallejo model color, mix it down together, and I'm very softly feathering this in. Now while it looks fairly stark and fairly bright on camera, this was a very thin mix that I went over a couple of times to get a really nice kind of gradient for the skin. Focusing on the cheekbones, the nose, the eyebrows, and a very pronounced forehead from the Prince of Saiyans. Let's tackle some of these details. So for the little grenadey thing, I went with Ghoul Green just to give us a splash of a color that wasn't blue, white, and yellow. And I thought the green was kind of a nice little tie into the Dragon radar from the show. I liked how it came out so much that I actually also did the gem. Now with the gem, I did it in the same steps, except I put a little bit of black speed paint into the green to create a shadow and a little dot of white. And finally, the part we've all been waiting for, the hair. Now I took Caribbean Ocean, or Caribbean Ocean, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And the same that we did with the yellow, we're going to take it very thin passes, let it dry, and keep working up the intensity from there. While I'm not too big on the whole slap chop thing, I do use speed paint just about every day in my painting, and that's for saturation. These things are so pigment strong that it really can boost just about any color that you want. Here's something we don't do a lot, basing. I'm going to show you a little trick to get a little bit more texture very simply and very quickly. So after spreading around some PVA glue and dumping it in our sand, I'm going to start scraping away at the sides of the base, and this is going to kind of push everything up.
Then taking a chopstick, I'm actually scraping away some of the sand to make a well. So this well is going to give us basically access to the plastic underneath so we can super glue on our tufted grass and our rocks, and then we're going to push all the sand back in towards it to make it look like it's actually supposed to be there. As always, a massive thank you to our sponsor InGames, and a massive thank you to everybody out there that's been watching and subscribing. We're nearly at 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, which is absolutely mind-blowing. This was a really fun little getaway from the seriousness that is Warhammer 40k, and hell, we're probably going to do more in the future. Maybe even Teenage Mutant Ninja Votan, or Power Rangers, hell, maybe even some Biker Mice from Mars Skaven. Big love to all our prismatic heretics that keep the channel running. If you like this video, give us a like and subscribe, and we'll see you next Tuesday.